Congratulations! We got Maduro out. Oh, we're so happy. I'm hearing all the accolades. Trump, you did it again. Oh my God, here we go. So the big question is, what's going to happen? So I'm taking a break from my snow because I'm going to go out and plow again, or actually snowblow. Before, I thought I'd start doing my coffee with Cork. And why am I going to do coffee with Cork? Because it seems to be the best way for me to be consistent on a daily basis, because there's just so many chores that have to be done. In the same way that I hope you are doing your chores, because those chores are going to help you out in the future very soon. Because the way things are going, and I'm working on my latest article for Substack, and this one's going to be a humdinger. It's going to be about the lifestyle, not the lifestyle, excuse me, the lifespan of a nation, the lifespan of an empire. And what you are seeing right now are the indicators of what's happening with our nation and our empire. You already saw a little bit as a hint when we lost the position as the reserve currency for the rest of the world. And this is falling down in a very insane way. But I want to ask you a question. Why? Why did Trump go after Maduro when he should have gone after Cuba? Why didn't he take out Cuba? Cuba is an island. It's an easier target. And to do what he had done, sure, it would have been harder to bribe the government officials and military officials that enabled us to have really good intelligence in order to get in there and get out quickly. And if you really look, it's actually a fantastic operation. Militarily, it's kudos to Delta, CAG, and DIA and everybody who made this happen in a great way. But in the long run, do we really own all this oil? Are we going to benefit from all this oil? You got to ask and think, who are the ones who actually benefited from this? And the ones who are benefiting are the ones who are saying what a great job was done. And those are Bibi Netanyahu and the Rothschilds. And why is it that the Rothschilds are all excited? Because Venezuela does not have a central bank owned by the Rothschilds. Even the United States has a central bank, the Federal Reserve, owned partially by the Rothschilds. That's what's so sick and insidious, is the Rothschilds have gotten their fingers into just about everything. And do you know when it started with the United States? 1791. So for all you people who think that Alexander Hamilton was this great savior and great man who got us out of troubles in terms of debt after the American Revolution, you should really think again on why Aaron Burr shot him dead and what that duel was all about. Because even though it was the first U.S. bank, the Bank of the United States, the central bank, the advisors on that creation of that bank were the Rothschilds through the Bank of England. The Bank of England, the City of London. When you hear me make reference to the City of London, I'm really talking about the Bank of England. The Bank of England, and I'm also specifically talking about the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds is a family that has gotten its fingers into every government and financial institution throughout Europe. And when we made a break from that in 1776, so we had a grace period from 1776 until 1779. And you know what? If Benjamin Franklin was still alive, we may have been graced a few more years, because he was so against it. He understood what made America great in the first place. We'll go into it in another episode because it's some deep stuff, and that's actually a full episode of understanding why a central bank that is nationalized and not owned by outside influencers, i.e. like the Federal Reserve, is what creates prosperity for the people of that nation. And when you have your central bank owned by outside interlopers, like all these people, all these banks that own into the Federal Reserve, you're automatically screwed. But I'm going to tell you a story to understand what is happening in Venezuela. And you wouldn't have gotten this story if you weren't in the war in Central America. Yeah, this war. This was the Tet Offensive of my generation, which was the Tet San Salvador, November and December of 1989. A very, very bad time in my life. We'll get into that later. We'll get into that when I finish off part 2. But, you know what? As you may have noticed, a lot of things are happening. Again, are you preparing on how you're going to survive? That your fiat currency is going to be worth $1 million Zimbabwe dollar. Does it sound depressing? It's depressing because you know what America was like before. You're old enough. If you're over the age of 58, 56, 61. I turned 61 last November. I remember what it was like. And even then, that's not even close to what it was in the 50s. I have no memories of the 50s. I have no memories of the early 60s. And my first memories of life are the Tet Offensive of Saigon, 1968. So, hey, what do I know about what it was like to be in the United States at that time? But hey, if I was, I'd probably have a better experience. I do remember our trips to Spokane and how much I enjoyed them. And how exciting it was to go to A&W Root Beer, A&W to get a burger, and how special that was. See, now it seems like that's what a normal meal is. But back in the day, it was considered a treat, a special to go to a fast food joint. Because like when you took a trip, you brown bagged it. The whole family, it was a brown bag. You got everything. You got your cooler, and you went on your trip, and you didn't buy food because it was so dang expensive. That was the norm. We're going to talk about my bell curve. I call it the bell curve of destiny. This is the way history works. You have prosperity. You have unification of a nation. Everybody working towards a goal of prosperity. And then you hit the peak. And at that peak is when all the freaking carpetbaggers have gotten on. And the weight of the carpetbaggers begins the process of everything going back down again. So you got all these carpetbaggers that we have in our government right now. That's the reason that if you look at the list of all the people who've been benefiting financially from Venezuela, from Israel, you don't have a country government. You don't own your government. You are not represented by your government in the United States. For that matter, if your central bank is beholden to the Bank of England, same for your country too. So what are you going to do about it? You need to be prepared to be off the fiat currency financial monetary system. How do you do that? The way it was done in the 1930s. It's a barter system. And that barter system can include various things. It can be actually a straight trade, like a product or produce, one for another. Let's say you raise potatoes, I raise tomatoes. We make a trade by pound or view of what we negotiate as to what is the value of the tomato over the potato and vice versa. Or you have gold, or you have silver, or you have copper. And that is a product that you can actually trade. So again, and that gold and silver, though, can actually, in the future, might return, and it's actually looking like it will return if these nations can't get together on this digital banking and digital cash. Because if they get that digital cash, and they can actually support it, that's why all this money is being spent on these servers and these databases, so they can actually have a platform on which to support this digital enslaving monetary system. And that's all it's about. It's a monetary system to ensure that you will never get out of the matrix. That's how they will enslave you. That's how they will enslave everybody. And anybody who's outside will be kind of like the Yakuza in Japan. The Yakuza in Japan cannot get a normal job. because they are in the Yakuza. They are part of the Yakuza. But if that's the case, and they can't make money, how do they make money? They've actually had to do things in order to be able to support themselves, which are outside of society. So now you have a fraction, increased fracture of society. And for those of us who live in the country, we are already outside of the normal monetary system. That was the reason I moved into the country. I'm going to reiterate, I am not a country boy. I come from generations of country boys, country people, going all the way back to Germany, to Spain, to Scotland, to Ireland, to England. And to go from that, where we've moved so far away from the origins of what made America great, which is the level of natural resources that are within this country and the exploitation of those resources that were what became our influence in the rest of the world. For instance, in England, all our big giant poles, our big giant logs we were able to get from the forest of America, they became the masts on the ships for the British Navy. And because of that, the British Navy became the most powerful navy. And then we started going towards steel. And America, by that point, under Carnegie, and we will be talking about Andrew Carnegie, because that guy, I used to actually respect that guy. But then after what I learned about the Carnegie Endowment and how all that we are dealing with is the result of plans that were encapsulated in these corporate board meetings at the Carnegie Endowment, that they planned everything. They planned the beginning ideas of the Federal Reserve. They planned the start of World War I, and they continued with World War II. They continued with the creation of the Great Depression. All these things are these resets that they've constantly been doing in order to enslave more and more people. They call it the creation of the beautiful New World Order. Even to the point that, remember when Bush Sr., Bush Sr., right when we kicked the butt of the Soviets, and people think, oh, well, they just fell. No, they didn't just fall. It was a full-on hot war. But you didn't get it reported, because if it got reported, then it would become a really hot war. So it was better to have it kind of like a tepid hot war where just a few 100,000 people got killed per war. Yeah, that lasted 10, 20 years, depending on what part of the world it was in. Africa, Asia, Central America, Latin America. You know, it's like my ex. When I was telling her things about what had happened, it's just like, why is it, that you didn't know about this and you didn't know about that? And she said, well, because they never really reported on it. Because, yeah, they didn't report on it. It's actually when I stopped being a freaking reporter and I started being a fighter. And you're going to have to start thinking about, do you want to just be an observer or do you want to get into the fight? Because things are going to change pretty quick. And it's going to change this year, and it's going to change when they finally, they're going to use the anti-Semitic clause to remove your rights of the First Amendment in the United States. They're already doing it in the UK. If you comment about anything anti-Israel in the UK, you get a visit from the police. And that's on your social media, on Facebook. I mean, how many people from another country are afraid of even just stepping foot in the UK now? Because they may have forgotten that they said something like, oh, well, that's just horrible what they're doing in Gaza. Just something like that. That could actually get you thrown in prison in the UK right now. And they're planning on doing that right here. They've already started it. And there's been freaking scuttlebutt going around that says that Trump actually converted to Judaism. But I don't call it Judaism because I have lots of friends who are Jews. No, we're talking about Zionism, which is interesting because there are actually, I think, more Christians who are Judeo-Christians, which that in itself is a total freaking unbelievable oxymoron. Created at the behest of the Rothschilds again. Because remember, everything related to Israel is at the behest of the Rothschilds. This is a family who has gotten its fingers into every country through the banking system bankrolling the leadership in those countries and going from country to country, sending their descendants from one country to the next. Germany, France, the UK. It's just wild. But let me tell you a little quick war story to really get an idea of what's happening. Because my big question again is, why not Cuba? Why not Cuba? Because everything that happened in Central America and Latin America that has been the reinstigating of the socialist and communist front in Latin America has been at the direction of the Cubans. And I find this interesting because when I was fighting in Central America, we captured Cubans. But here's the interesting thing. Not one of those Cubans ever went into the prison system in El Salvador. Not once. What happened is State Department took possession. I didn't even get to debrief this guy. And the other guys that I heard about. Never got interrogated. Never got a chance for them to be debriefed as to like how and what other... I'm not going to go into that. Not a chance. Immediately went straight over to State. State took them to Mexico City. Right in the Mexico City, they were transferred over to the Cuban embassy. So an emissary from the Cuban embassy would take possession of one of their former fighters in the jungles of Honduras and El Salvador and would disappear. Probably got medals, probably got a freaking hacienda on the beach. But it always stuck with me. It's like, why? I mean, they're the ones who are doing all this stuff. They were the ones running all the programs. Let's be really clear on who the Castros were. Fidel Castro was very happy just being in charge and being the big loudmouth for communism and for the Soviets in Cuba, and that's as far as it went. Che Guevara, on the other hand, the homicidal, racist motherfucker from Argentina, Che, which Che is basically like, hey, buddy. That's what Che means. So you can understand what Che Guevara, forgot his first real name. Just like I've forgotten freaking Ho Chi Minh's real name. But Che Guevara and Raul Castro, those two, they were soulmates. Total soulmates. When it came to revolution and getting everything done in Latin America. So when the war was happening in Central America, you had Daniel Ortega, who is now the president again. We'll get into that. He's the president of Nicaragua. And then you've got freaking Raul. And Raul is the one who was doing all the negotiating, doing all the freaking getting monies. So when the Salvadoran FMLN were saying, hey, you know, we're taking weapons from the government, the soldiers, and we're getting people defecting from the government into the FMLN in these amazing numbers, it was total bullshit. Because the arms that they were using, they might as well have been AK-47s. Because what they were all the armaments that we left in Vietnam and Indochina at the end of the war in 75. So, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, hey, here's a moneymaker. So they sold them to Fidel Castro and Daniel Ortega and the Sandinistas, because the Sandinistas, of course, were in charge of Nicaragua. And so they were smuggling. And so I was part of that interdiction doing this by boat, going in and cutting off these supply lines coming into El Salvador. Then we had the guerrillas bringing them over the mountains from the Sandinistas again. But what's interesting is that Cuba has never been taken out in frickin' 67 years? They came into power in 59. They've never been taken out. It's a small island. So we can do a major operation into a country the size of Venezuela and take their president out by basically buying out everybody, because that's how it was done. That's how we had, we didn't lose anybody. We didn't lose anybody. And they got the avispas negras, which is the black wasps, special forces from Cuba. And they're the ones that got whacked. I think it was 49 of them got killed. So they were fighting this hard, you know. They believe in their cause. And so they got freaking sacrificed. And frankly, I think there was a deal that was already done between Maduro and our administration, which is sit tight, we'll get you out of there. And we did. And has anything changed? Not really. We've got now the vice president is now the president. It's all changed over. Everything's flipped over now. Remember, this is about never-ending wars and spending American blood and American money. This is a game. This is a game that these evil people do. Remember, they're the wealthiest people in the world. It goes back to that old game show. What do you give the richest man in the world? What's the best gift to give the richest man in the world? And the answer is power. It's not money. They've got money. They've got tons of money. They don't need money. And money's fake. Remember what money is. Money is trust and confidence. And that's the reason that your chicken eggs, your gas, it's not because we're not having, there's oil all over the place. We've got to come in for that. We've got the oil. The thing about it is, it's a belief system in the currency. And when people when other nations lose confidence and trust in whoever is the holder of the main currency, before it was the English, the British, before that it was the Spanish, everything will flip and it continues to cycle. We're in these cycles. They're constantly currency cycles, nation lifespan cycles. They keep on going over and over and over. And the question is, where do you find yourself? Are you on this? Like my parents and grandparents? I mean, they did have a blip, the Great Depression. But this Great Depression that my father and my grandparents went through, and my great-grandparents went through, it's going to be nothing in relation to what's coming. Because the one that's coming now, they at least had the patriotism, the unification of the nation, and they had the wherewithal where everybody kind of like knew to do things. You got a generation now that has to be told not to eat freaking poisonous stuff. You got people who get a freaking instruction manual for a vehicle and are told not to drink the freaking battery fluid. Instead of like how to actually repair the vehicle, which our parents and grandparents, I even remember freaking learning how to freaking repair a VW bus and a VW a Beetle. I mean, shoot, the Beetle was my freaking little Jeep. I used to go deer hunting all throughout Northern California. Shot one buck up in Chester, Lake Almanor. One of the biggest black-tailed mule deer cross I ever got. Drove it straight back to San Francisco on the VW, sitting in the passenger seat with part of the antlers sticking out the window because it was that big. But hey, the game is on. And the question is, do you want to be just another pawn, like 90% of all these sheeple that I said before? 85% of you are not going to make it. 85% of you who are not going to make it are going to be the people who trust your government 100%, believe that your leadership is going to get you out of a hellhole. When the ship has sailed, it's got a course. There's not any deviation from this course. The question is, do you have life rafts? Do you know how to swim? Do you have weather protection? Do you have food to get you through the storm? So by the time you survive and you're a castaway on a new island, you can actually thrive because you have the seeds with which to start a new life and create, and you have the knowledge and skills on how to build a home? Or are you going to just be somebody who freaking turns into freaking bones on the sand? This is the question you need to be asking yourself. This distraction of Maduro and all this stuff with Venezuela, it's distraction. It doesn't affect you. Unless your name is Rothschild. Then you're freaking jumping up and down and laughing. So, make your own program if you haven't already. Grab another cup of coffee. Hey, I'm going to go out and freaking blow some snow. Get it off the driveway. But I am imploring you, do not feel it suddenly because we took out a president and the government infrastructure is still there in the country. It's still very anti-American. It's still very communist. Is any way going to change things in terms of how much the cost of your gasoline is going to be? It's not going to change. There might be a little blip just to make you think that something happened, and then boom, we'd be right back while they profit. And the whole idea is creating chaos. Remember, that's what these people are doing. The Rothschilds and all of their ilk, they're a small group. So how do you control a large group? You keep them divided, and you keep them bouncing all over the place in chaos. If they're trying to treat them like a cat, you know, grab a little fly, a little cotton ball on a string, and just keep on dancing that cotton ball all over the place. And that cat's just going to keep on freaking slapping at that little cotton ball. Don't be the cat. Think. Aim. On that note, I wish you the best. God bless. Things are going to get hairy this year. And hey, if I didn't say it already, Happy New Year.